Hi, everybody. Welcome. I see Lelaine is joining us.
Hi,
Hi,
good morning.
Lelaine.
Hi, good
Hi,
morning.
Hey,
James. Oh, James, I love your background.
hello. Welcome to the
Beautiful
beach.
beaches. And we have Jean joining us. So excited, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome. We are so excited today to be hosting the third Lafora talk show. We've had a wonderful, overwhelming response to the Lafora talk show, and we're very excited to have two new guests today who are going to be sharing their story with you. And we can't wait to hear all about your journey and to learn from your experience, the good and the bad. Jean will be joining in the conversation. I know that we'd advertised that Paul will be joining us, but Paul is, as many of you know, Paul is doing his doctorate right now, and he is becoming a nurse practitioner, and he was unable to join us. And we are very grateful to Miss Jean, who is joining us today and will be sharing in the conversation. So my name is Tanya Friedman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Kinetics USA. As everybody knows, the Lafora Talk Show we're doing once a month, and we are sharing the stories of nurses from all over the US who have encountered this journey. The reason why we're doing the Lafora Talk Show is for many of you in the group, you are, so worried and frustrated and have been going through the journey of getting to the US, passing your NCLEX, passing your IELTS, getting the visa screen, getting a sponsor, getting a petitioner, waiting, encountering many hiccups, and then not realizing that when you come to the US, there might be other successes, but also challenges that you encounter. So the purpose of the talk show is for nurses in the group to share their story. We have a few ground rules that I just want to share with everybody. The first is that we ask the guests that come on the show to be authentic and real. This is our group. This is our safe place to land. And we want not just a pep talk. Of course, we want the pep talk, but we don't just want a pep talk. We really want the real journey, the good and the bad, and how, if there was some bad, how you overcame that. And then also we ask our guests not to share, where they're working, if they came with a specific agency name, if they're in a specific state, because we really just want to keep this neutral. The other thing that we ask is that from your side, that you are respectful of everybody's experience, and that you don't bombard the guests with private messages, because this if you have questions, please put them into the chat. We just want to be respectful and be, just keep everybody's privacy. So with that said, let's get started. Okay, and if you want to put into the chat where you are and what your name is and where you are watching from. So we have Hyacinth. Hi, Hyacinth. I know Hyacinth, who's watching from Saudi. Milanis is from the Philippines. Ramel is watching from Philippines. Dorothy from Philippines. Charabelle is watching. Sheila is watching. Blessy is watching. Cheryl is watching. Janelle is watching. Mayong is watching. Christine is watching. Weiner is watching from Philippines. And Jean. There you are.
Good morning, everybody.
If you're watching, everybody, please put into the chat what your name is and where you're watching from. Okay. Lelaine and James, we know it can be very scary and overwhelming, right, Jean? Do you remember the first time we did this, Jean, how nervous we all were?
Yeah. I was very, what do you call that? I forgot. Excited and apprehensive, and I have palpitations the first time we started this one.
I remember it well. I had butterflies in my stomach. Lelaine and James, do you feel like that a little bit as well?
Yes, I'm very excited because this is actually my first time to, to have an interview on online, and I know that there's a lot of nurses out there who are interested to watch and hear our stories.
Yeah. And thank you for being brave and for doing the interview, because I know that it's going to be so inspirational for so many people. What
Uh-huh.
about you, James?
Yeah, it's kind of different kind of audience because I use Zoom with my classes because I'm a university faculty, so I use Zoom a lot, especially with the pandemic. So like half of the semester, I've been doing Zoom like 2 to 3 times a week with my students. So this was just a different audience. So I'm kind of comfortable, but with a different audience, there's always that little anxiety. So especially
Mhm.
what kind of questions they'll be asking. But yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
Well, if you haven't used Zoom that much, or if you've used it more like James, it's still a scary experience. And I really am so grateful to Lelaine and to James for doing this. So we amongst friends. So this is just going to be, a casual chat, and we're going to be sharing your stories. Okay, so first question, and everybody, if you have a question, please post it into the chat. As I said, please do not private message Lelaine and James. We want to respect their privacy, but you're welcome to put your questions into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. So,
Okay.
Lelaine and James, do you want to just tell us a little bit about your story? How long the process took for you to come to the US? What was it along the way? Just share your journey of getting to the US, just up to the point when you got to the US. Lelaine, maybe
Ladies first.
ladies first.
So we applied for a fiancé visa in 2015, and it took us 3 months for the whole process. So we applied in May 2015, and I got my approval in August, and then I arrived here in the US in September 4, 2015.
Wow, that's so quick, Lelaine. I know there's so many people in the forum that are like, oh, I wish that was me.
I know. Yeah, I was very blessed
Yeah, you
to,
were lucky.
yeah.
James, what about you?
Well, first of all, I would like to say I started my journey, last century, if I would put it. Yeah. So I was with that group that had a retrogression way back in the 90s. So I started my
Okay.
application back in like 1994. I graduated 93. I started joining 94. Then I had a retrogression. So like nobody left for like probably about 5 years. Then in 99, I had to reapply. So I started from scratch. The good thing back then was that they were offering immigrant visas, the H1A back then. It took me about from September of '09 when I applied. Then I finally got to the US July of 2002. So that was about more or less 2 years. More than 2 years of processing and waiting. Yeah, 2 years, which was pretty much the average for an immigrant visa back
Yeah.
then.
So a very different story from Lelaine, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
far out.
Jean and I can relate a little bit more to James, right, Jean?
Mhm.
Mine is like nine months. It's a very quick process. It just took me 9 months. I mean, the agency that helped me, it's only 9 months process for me. It was so quick, and I
That is
graduated
good.
1995. I came here in America in 2006.
Wow.
I
And
applied on
for
2005.
2005. Wow. So that's in the olden days, right, Jean?
Yeah,
It was also quicker.
we're
Yeah.
already
Absolutely.
old.
I feel you.
Well, I go back even further. For everybody watching, on July the 4th was my 20th anniversary that I left. So I came from South Africa many years ago, And on July 4th, Independence Day, I always think it was really my independence because it was life-changing. That was how long ago I left South Africa, my home country, to come to the US. So it really is a journey for everybody, different for everybody, but it has its ups and downs. Lelaine, when you first arrived in the US, what was it like? What was your first few days here like?
Actually, I was pregnant during that time. So it was really a challenge because, I have to take care of my baby at the same time. But it was a good experience. I like the weather. The people are very friendly, very outgoing. And I just enjoy the atmosphere, the foods, the nice places because we arrived first in Guam and then to Hawaii and then in San Francisco.
Okay. So it sounds like it was quite an easy first few days.
Yes, it was very easy. Yeah.
Well, that's good. And you, James, was your first few days also easy and kind of smooth?
Yeah, I actually had a very pleasant experience with the hospital that hired me. They actually formed a Filipino nurse task force for the hospital because it was their first time to hire a lot of nurses overseas. So they really made sure that all the nurses that they hired were taken care of. So right from the airport, how could you imagine? You just imagine the HR director getting my luggage, all those HR people and managers and some directors, even one of the directors of nursing, came to meet us, and they housed us to this different apartments. So we were really very pleased with the accommodation, with the welcome. So the first few days were really settling down. The southern hospitality in the southern U.S. We felt that they gave us probably a few days to rest. And the following Monday, it's like, okay, orientation time. So it was pretty much very, very, I would say, pleasant and easy.
Okay. And very often those first few days are really what we call the honeymoon. It's really just easy and you're just so excited and happy to be here. Do you remember those first few days, Jean?
Oh, yes.
Tell us about it.
My first few days. So from the airport, the liaison of the agency fetched us from the airport, and then we went to the buffet. We eat. We went to the Social Security Administration office, and then we went to the furniture store to get our things. So we don't have to, but we did lay on the like a water bed. No, not a water bed. Air mattress on the first day, first night, because we still don't have the furnitures in the room. Yeah. But it was a pleasant experience.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I think so often those first few days, if you remember back, you're just so appreciative of any little help that you get from anyone. And I think that's really the importance of like the Lafora talk show, is that, we want to be there for each other. And that's why we're so grateful to guests like Lelaine and to James for coming on this on the Lafora talk show, and to the Lafora admin team for giving this opportunity to so many Laforans, because when you hear what other people's experiences are, it really helps you, and we can really pay it forward for others by being there for each other, because it really does make a difference. Just sometimes like a little thing, like James was saying, that somebody picking you up from the airport can make such a huge difference. It really just makes it much easier.
Yeah, and the hospital staff had to also learn the Filipino culture. So one of the funny things that they did was to make sure that in every apartment, the first group of nurses that arrived there were 11 of us, the first group. There were about like 150 nurses that they hired at the time. They had to make sure that in every apartment, you won't believe it, there was a rice cooker and rice. So they really shop from like the Asian store. So because they know we will be looking for that. So I mean, that was one of those pleasant surprises. Yeah. So
Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
those little things really
It's
really
the
help.
little things that make a
Mhm.
difference. Yeah. And you,
Like,
Elaine, were there any funny stories or anything that you experienced in those first few days that you remember?
Yeah, because my first day, I remember my husband took me to a restaurant, and then the waiter asked me for my order. I said I just want a corned beef hash with bread, and then he asked me, what kind of bread do you want? I said, I don't know anything about bread. I mean, I didn't even know that there are different kinds of bread. So I just told him, just give me a regular or plain bread, because in the Philippines
Yeah.
we only have one bread. We serve every breakfast. It's like pandesal or tasty. So I was too shy to answer the waiters. I just told him, whatever you think is good, then just serve it, and I have no problems with that.
It can feel very overwhelming, right?
Yes, yeah.
As you're talking, it reminds me the first time that I came to America, I came to visit my sister. She was living here already. And she asked me, can I go to the supermarket to go buy some apples? And in South Africa, you had green apples, you had red apples. You didn't have
Mhm.
like all these different varieties of
Yeah.
apples. And I went to the store and I literally just like stood there because I didn't know what to pick. I didn't know there were like so many different varieties, so many names. So, and then when I came back home, she was like, what took you so long? You went to go buy apples. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's those little things that can just be so different.
Mhm. That's really true.
Yeah. So if you think back, Lelaine and James, what would you say were the biggest challenges that you experienced? Because often what happens is like those first few days are kind of like the honeymoon. And then in the coming months, the first like 6 months to a year, and Jean knows this well. I know we've spoken about it on previous Lafora talk shows. Tell us about some of the challenges that you had and how you were able to overcome those.
I think when
Uh,
I was
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I think because when I arrived here in the US, I started applying for the NCLEX RN exam. So I think that was the biggest challenge, because they ask for a lot of requirements, and I have to wait for, I think, like 3 months to get an approval to take the exam. And then after I take the exam, I have to apply for a job. I think that was really a challenge, because I stopped working for like a year because I was pregnant, and then I have some fears that they might not hire me because of my work gap. But I was able to work as a nurse, like 1 week after I passed the NCLEX RN exam. So I feel so blessed.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was a good ending. What advice would you give to somebody who finds themselves in that position where they're coming in and have a gap and they don't have a petitioner? So maybe they're not coming on an EB3, they're coming like on a fiance visa. What advice would you give to somebody looking for a job in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so during my interview, just be honest, with your nursing experience. Tell them what kind of patients you had before, and just tell them the truth, because you cannot lie with your employer, because they can see it when you start working. They can observe if you really have an experience or not. So just be honest. That's it.
Yeah, that's good advice, Lelaine. Always be honest. Honesty is the best policy.
Yes.
Jean, do you have any other advice maybe that you can share with any nurses that coming in a similar way to Lelaine, not on an EB3 and looking for a job?
like coming in like a fiance visa, and they don't. So if you
Yeah.
are coming in here in the United States and have you didn't pass NCLEX yet, then it depends on the state where you are living, because some of the states have different requirements. So different states have different requirements. So like if you are in California, if your relatives are in California and you came in here as a tourist or as fiance of like a fiance visa. So when you come in here and you apply in California board, like I know you have to have your ORDR cases to be evaluated in California Board of Nursing. But then if you don't have that, then that's the very big problem, and it will
Yeah.
take like maybe 6 to 8 months for the evaluator in California board to evaluate your credentials. And then sometimes they will say that you need to take classes first. You need to enroll in the OBGYN or pedia or med-surg. And so if it's difficult for you to apply in California, then probably you can go in other states like New York, because New York has they don't need experience. They don't even need you to have a license in the Philippines. So look for a state where the requirements are easy, and then maybe after passing that NCLEX in New York, then you can probably endorse it to California Board of Nursing. But I cannot guarantee that if you also pass New York NCLEX through New York Board, then you won't be advised to take the classes anymore. It just all depends on your evaluator.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you need help in those cases, you can just ask me.
Yeah. Jean is really the expert. She knows all of the boards so well. And there's a lot of information also in the fora. So if you find yourself in a situation like Lelaine, really Jean is the go-to person, and there's also a lot of information in the fora. And I would probably also suggest that if you are going for interviews and you came, for instance, like on a fiance visa, one thing that I would just suggest, and James, I don't know if maybe you have maybe some advice as well for nurses in that situation, but when you go to the interview, it's important to do your research about that facility. So not just go in and say, I'm looking for a job, but to do your research, to be able to say what is special about that facility, and in the interview to share what you've researched, to show that you really are committed and that you are really interested in that specific organization, and to show your enthusiasm. You can say, I had a gap like maybe Lelaine did, I had a baby, but I'm really committed, I really want to learn. James, do you have any other advice maybe to share just in getting the job, like going for the interview if you're in that situation?
Um, yeah, this is one of the sessions I have with my students, helping them get a job for interviews. So one of the things I tell them is, and also based on my experience, is that you're right. You have to know the facility you're going to be working at. You have to know visit their website, know their vision and mission, and you want to articulate those words, those core values, and how you will be contributing to the mission, to the vision, and how those values are consistent with your own. And you should be able to make that connection, because when employers are looking for a prospective employee, they are looking for, you may be the best in the clinical skills, but if you are not a good fit with the organization, you will lose a chance for getting the job. And there's a mantra in hiring now that they say, we train for skills, but we hire for attitude. Yeah. So you have to show that professionalism. Do not be insecure, or don't feel less if you didn't have a lot of, say, patients with trach care or trachs or IC experience or IV, or they will train you in those. So which sometimes in the Philippines setting, that's a different. We have a different hiring, practice back there. It's like, who's the most skillful, who has the most trainings. And here it's the attitude that you will be able to demonstrate or to show or to your prospective employer. So look at their website and see how you fit to the organization, how you can help uh, in achieving their mission vision.
Yeah, that is great advice, and I think you hit on the key word, and that is attitude, because I think so many employers are going to look at your attitude and at your motivation, and that's going to really help you and go a long way. Maybe talk a little bit, James, about when you talk about attitude, like in those first year that you came to the US, what was it like for you? And what were the biggest challenges you experienced, and how did you overcome that?
Okay, so this is kind of, I would say, a revelation because, I've been a nurse in the Philippines for about 9 years prior to migrating here to the US. And those 9 years, I tell you, I was not a staff nurse at all. I mean, from after graduating from college, I went to teaching right away. So I taught in nursing school. So coming to the US without any bedside experience, it was really a hurdle, so it was hard. It was challenging. So I was a clinical instructor, but having students is different from having direct patient care. And that very first day when I had to care for a patient, I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do now? I have to be in the role of that staff nurse. So that was probably the biggest challenge. And another thing is that back in 2002, there were no international testing centers for NCLEX yet. So we had to come to the US and work as a CNA before, and it took us about probably a couple of months before we were able to take the NCLEX. And another part of the challenge was that the job that I had in the Philippines before coming to the US was that I was a dean of the School of Health Sciences. And for me to work as a CNA, and so I'm like, I am the dean and I'm the CNA. It's like, but I signed up for this, so I have to be flexible. And I had to do what a CNA does. And once I passed my NCLEX on my first take, of course, then I just had to learn as much as I can. The good thing about teaching is that theoretically I know those different aspects, but to put it in practice, it kind of helps. So I mean, you have to be really very open and flexible and learn as much as you can. I mean, the good thing about hospitals here is that they will train you. So regardless of your baseline, they will give you the training that you need. So that's how I overcame the challenge. I really had to make the most out of learning the system, learning the equipment, learning the technology, and just assimilating with the US nursing practice. And 18 years after, yeah.
You're here to tell the story.
Yeah.
Well, I think your story is just so interesting and will be so inspiring for so many people, because to be at the position that you were in and then come and work here as a CNA, I think probably was extremely challenging.
Oh yeah.
And
but
probably, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. But again, being me in terms of, like I said, this is what I want. So I wouldn't mind starting from the bottom up, because the limitation there was that there was no testing center in Manila. Okay. So, and it was part of orientation where, you have to work as a CNA until such time you pass your NCLEX. So, and this will also probably inspire those who have no clinical experience, that you can find some agencies or employers that can also hire you, and just make the most out of it. Grab the chance to be trained.
Yeah. And I think the thing that strikes me so much as you're speaking, James, is that you had your eye on the goal, that you knew that in the beginning it was what you signed up for. You knew that it wasn't going to be all, rainbows and fairies, as people say, like everything perfect and utopia. You were doing a job that you really probably didn't really want to do, right? I mean, it's hard to go from where you were to being a CNA, but you kept your goal on the end result of that. You knew it would take time, but you would get there. And to take the opportunity of the training.
Yes, and if I would put it simply, when I went to nursing school, at the back of my mind, of course, I couldn't tell it to the one who was interviewing me in nursing school, but at the back of my mind, the only reason why I wanted to take up nursing is I want to work and live in the U.S. Period. And I have to make my way up once I'm there. So 18 years after, here I am, and my
Wow.
PhD. So I really had that goal to really keep on moving. So yeah, that's the only thing I wanted, to work and live as a nurse in the U.S.
Yeah. So
So
you
I
had
didn't
your
really mind.
dream. You had your dream, and you were determined that you were going to make it happen.
Yes, I was like, I'm gonna make it happen, no matter what.
Failure is not an option.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So only plan
That's
A, no plan B.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And you used the word being flexible a few times. Um, um, to Lelaine and James, if you think of it from a nursing perspective, how was nursing different, and how did you have to be flexible from a clinical perspective when you started working in the US? I know Jean has shared with us her experience of that on previous Lafora talk shows.
Yeah, so my first job here in the US, I was a cashier while waiting for my NCLEX RN exam. And then I also applied for a caregiver position. And then after I passed the NCLEX RN, I worked in a skilled nursing facility as a nurse, but it only lasted for like a month. And then I applied for an ICU position in a 6 beds ICU. So I was able to get the job position. I started working full time, and then the thing is that we sometimes whenever we have a low census, they will float me to different departments. So I was floated to med surge, I was floated to emergency room. So you have to be very flexible and you have to be tough. If you don't know anything, then you have to be assertive and ask questions, because you have to make sure that you're safe and that you are giving the right care for your patients. And then after that, I applied for a different ICU position in a bigger hospital setting, in a 200 beds hospital. So I was able to get the job, and I started working as a trauma ICU nurse. And then I had like two jobs at the same time. So I was working full time, and then I was working part time, and then I just decided to just keep my full time job in a trauma cardiac unit, because I just learned that it's hard to balance. So I think flexibility, and you have to be you have to learn how to voice out your concerns. If you feel like you're not safe, then you have to talk to your manager. And if you have problems with your patients, and maybe you can ask them to give you a different nursing assignment. And if, for example, they give you a balloon pump patient and you're not comfortable, or you're not oriented with that kind of patients, then maybe you can just talk to them, be honest. Don't take responsibility that you are not capable of doing. I think that's the advice that I will tell them.
That's wonderful advice, Lelaine, and really an interesting story, because it seems like you went from like skilled nursing and then to the next job and then to the next job, and each time you were able to gain more and more experience. But the common thread that you seem to be giving the message is to be assertive, right?
Yes. And before that, I also worked in Saudi Arabia as an ICU nurse before I arrived here in the US. That's why, I have I already gained the experience. But, different facilities, they have different protocols. So it doesn't mean that my practice in Saudi Arabia is the same as the way they handle patients here. So there's a lot of differences. So, in terms of machines, IV pumps, the patients, their attitude, how they behave. and how you deal with your doctors as well, it's very different. You cannot just say that I already have my bedside experience and I'm capable of doing it. No, you have to. It's like you're starting from scratch. So you don't have to. You just have to compare and then learn and just go on with the flow and just make sure that you're safe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really wonderful advice. And I see that Paul has joined us. Hi,
Hi.
Paul.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Looking
I'm
very
sorry.
professional, Paul.
Yes, I'm sorry I was late. I'm in the clinic right now. I'm doing my family nurse practitioner residency, and it's just been a busy day. We have a lot of COVID patients that we're trying
Mhm.
to call and do contact tracing. And I'm happy to see Lelaine and Sir James,
Hi.
Miss Jean and Tanya. Thank you for your time, and I'm sorry for being late.
We understand. We know that this is trying times that we're living in, very difficult times. And we're just grateful that you can be here, even if it's for a few minutes. So, and that's the purpose of the Lafora Talk Show also, is to we want to try and spread a little bit of light at this time that's really difficult, and just share our inspiring stories. James, from a clinical perspective, I know Lelaine has shared her experience as a nurse on the clinical side, and I know you've also spoken a little bit about your experience just generally. Can you speak about it from a clinical perspective? What were the biggest differences that you experienced?
Okay, so the hospital that hired me is one of the university medical centers. It's a nationally ranked medical center. So the practice, the technology are state of the art. So you know, transitioning to that environment was really challenging at the same time. So you have to be really flexible in terms of learning those things. The area that I was assigned to was neurosurgery, so that was more of a shocker for me because, like back in the Philippines, you don't see a neurosurgery as a specialty unit. Then when I started in that area, I liked it, so I had to learn as much as I can. Now, being flexible because you may have different kinds of patients with the same diagnosis. You work with different people, and it's a medical center with School of Medicine, so there's a lot of medical residents. So you really work with a lot of patients and staff. So I think the flexibility comes from my previous work experience where I had to do a lot of interpersonal relations thing with the faculty and students. So that really helped me transition from the academia into clinical practice. So I don't know, it's a thing in me wherein, rather than when dealing with people, I always look into what's going on rather than directly attacking them or saying something. Or in other words, don't be judgmental. So in that way, you can be flexible in dealing with different kinds of people. Um, and
Yeah.
that really helped me with that smooth transition from the Philippines and into the US.
And that seems to be a common thread, James, is like that attitude, right? Just like trying to see it from a positive attitude, trying to be flexible. That seems to be a common theme from both you and Lelaine. And I can tell you, Gina, I know you can probably share as well, but I can tell you from my experience, I've experienced it myself, and I've seen thousands and thousands of nurses come through to the US. And the common theme is that the first few days and weeks are kind of the honeymoon when it's really just exciting and you're so happy to be here. And then some challenges can set in, but often I've seen it's the attitude of having the goal in mind, as James has said, like knowing, even if you have to take a few steps back before you move forward, being flexible, as James said, being assertive, as Lelaine said. Jean, would you agree with that? Is that what your experience has been as well? Those nurses who have the right attitude are the ones that tend to do better.
Yes, yes. Hmm.
Yeah.
You have to be assertive. And if you don't know, the process, you have to ask anybody, your charge nurse, that I don't know this procedure, please help me, something like that. Don't assume that you know everything, because
Yeah.
it's a learning curve, it's a learning process, everything.
And it can be uncomfortable when you're in a learning curve. Like when you're actually in it, you can feel really uncomfortable, because even if you have worked in Saudi, in the UAE, in another country, you can feel just it can be uneasy, unsettling. You feel out of your comfort zone, and you really have to work on your attitude. So just to look at the chat, I wanted to just see if there are any questions. I know we have Fritz watching from Saudi, Genevieve is watching from Dubai, Jib is watching from Philippines, Sheila from New Jersey, May from Kuwait, Jassel from Saudi, Edmund is watching from Colorado, and Janelle from the Philippines, Christelle, I know Christelle, Sheila, hi Sheila. Miss Leilani, we are the same. We came using the fiance visa. So Sheila is relating to you, Lelaine. Angeline, oh hi Angeline. May is watching. Joy is watching. Abby, I know Abby's watching. Amor, hi Amor is watching. Okay, Brigoli has a question. I'm residing here in Maryland and I'm a registered nurse in the Philippines. My license expired. Do they need it to apply for the NCLEX? Jean, do you want to maybe take that question for Brigoni?
Sure. Yeah. So if you are in Maryland and you want to take NCLEX through Maryland Board of Nursing, you need to have that license. And if your license has been expired, in the PRC, they will not do the verification of your license unless your license is active. So you need to renew that one first. And so you need a credential evaluation in CGFNS. So the credential evaluation, you will need the PRC verification to be submitted to CGFNS and the school documents to be submitted in CGFNS. So to answer your question, yes, you need a license, renew that first, and then the process will continue the process with that.
Okay, so there you go, Brigoli, from the go-to Miss Jean, sharing her words of wisdom. Dong is asking, greetings from Norway, just a question, is it possible to apply for a social security even though I'm here in Norway? And Dong, the answer to that is no, unless you have a green card, or if you are a Canadian citizen coming on the TN visa. You need to pass the NCLEX and get a petitioner, and please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you with that. Vez is saying, wow. So Vez seems to be enjoying it. Marvin, oh, hi, Marvin. Marvin joined us at the last month at the Lafora Talk Show. Welcome, Marvin. Princess, hi, Princess. I know Princess is watching. So Christine has a question. Christine has a question about an L2 visa. Christine, I'm going to table this question and I'm going to ask it when I do the forum with the lawyers, and we can answer your question for the L2 visa. I will make a note of that to make sure to ask for you. Michelle is watching. Christine is watching. Ramel. Ramel is asking, my question is there any age limit when you apply to be a nurse in the US? And the answer is no, Ramel. There is no age limit. Sheila has a question. I think this question looks like it is about the NCLEX.
I have a question for NCLEX.
So Jean, maybe if you want to go into the chat afterwards and answer that question from Sheila about NCLEX. Okay. Oh my goodness, we're getting so many questions. This is so exciting. Weiner is asking, is the EB3 included from the freeze hiring going on in the US? And the answer, Weiner, is no. So we are, right now, there are hundreds of nurses still being sponsored, which is the good news. The visa bulletin is moving positively, which is really good news. And we also have the Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act, which Congress is going to be, I believe they're going back on July the 10th So we're really hopeful. And in the US, a lot of people, including Kinetics USA, have been working very hard behind the scenes to educate the facilities and the congressmen, the senators, and the House on this particular bill. And it probably will be voted on in the next like 6 weeks or so. So we're very hopeful that if that comes in, that could be a fast track for nurses. So stay watching and we'll keep you updated on that. Tinkamel is watching from Illinois. Paul is watching. Louise, hi Louise. So great to have you here. Dor France is watching from the UAE. Maria from the Philippines. Noel from lots and lots of people. Frolin from Saudi. Gracie from Singapore. Diane is watching. Frolian is asking about the EB3 visa once you've already licensed and have a good IELTS score. So Frolian, we'll ask that on the lawyers panel. So to finish off, the last question for Lelaine and James, what would you say is, what surprised you in your move to the US? What would you say was the biggest surprise that you didn't expect in your journey of coming to America? Lelaine.
I did not expect that I would be hired as an ICU nurse right away, because I was expecting that because of my work gap experience, like a 1-year gap, I will have a hard time looking for a job. But I was so honest with my employers. I just told them this is the kind of patients I used to have when I was working in Saudi Arabia, and then they put me on an orientation, so they observe how I work. So if you have that goal in mind, if you will work hard for your goals, it will really come true. So just don't give up, and then just continue what you're doing, and then you will be able to to achieve whatever goals you have. Yeah.
Those are really words of wisdom, Lelaine. Pearls of wisdom. Don't give up. This is a journey. It doesn't end the day you arrive and get off the plane in the US. It's a journey that continues. But I think to be assertive in that journey and to be honest. And thank you for being honest with us today and sharing your experience.
Thank you.
James, what would you say for this question? What surprised you? James? Oh, I think we have a little bit of a technical hitch. Jean, what surprised you the most about coming to the US?
What surprised me in coming here?
Yeah, what didn't you expect?
I think the culture of some people, like sometimes I experience some discrimination. Like, we are not born to speak English in the Philippines, and then some of the words that we have here is different. It's difficult to pronounce. So the potassium, and I don't know. Until now, I still have a difficulty pronouncing that potassium. So yeah, those discrimination. I feel some of those discrimination in the hospital.
Yeah. And I think that's, the reality. We're living in the real world, and there are, some people who are nice and some people who are not always so nice. And that's the reality. It's, it's not all perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for being honest and sharing that as well. James, welcome back. We seem to have lost you for a minute.
I know. Internet.
What was something you want to share with the LaFlorens that you didn't expect when you were surprised about about coming to the US?
I don't know if I would say something that's probably, I would say, unexpected. Yeah, sort of. On the clinical side or the practice, but it's more of when I transitioned from, because after 3 years of working full, I went, in the academy for so long. So to in my I was looking for the kind of work environment. So what I didn't expect, or what probably surprised me, was when they like there were no plans in terms of my credentials from the like my teaching experience, my academic requirements. So it was a I would
James, I think you seem to be having some connection issue. James, can you hear us? Oh, I think James is having a technical hitch. I'm just looking at the time. I can't believe that we are over time, but it was such a fun discussion. James, can you hear me? I think he's on again. No, we seem to have lost James. So unfortunately, we've lost James. Oh, are you back, James?
Yeah, there's some disconnection.
Yeah, I think he might.
Sorry.
No problem, James. Thank you so much for being on the Lafora Talk Show. Thank you, Lelaine. We loved hearing your story. I think it was so inspiring for so many people. Thank you to James. Unfortunately, we've lost connection, but hopefully he can watch the recording. Thank you for James. I think he really showed another perspective, and really having that like perseverance to know what the goal is in mind, even though you might be encountering some challenges, I think will be so encouraging to so many people. And Miss Jean, thank you so much for your time and your expertise. To Paul for coming on and giving us a few minutes. I know how busy everybody is right now. And just overall to the Lafora team, I know so many people are so grateful for this opportunity to learn from each other at this trying time and pay it forward. If any of you are have got friends or colleagues that are looking to come to the US, please pay it forward. This is your turn now to pay it forward to others, and make sure to tag your friends and to share this video with your friends so that we can prepare people. Education is key. Knowledge is key. And the more you know about what the journey is going to be like, the better prepared you're going to be and the smoother the transition. And for those nurses who have not yet passed the NCLEX, Jean is your go-to person. Please ask her your questions. Now is the time. The visa bulletin is progressing really well. The Healthcare Workforce Resilience Act we're hoping is going to be voted on in the next 6 weeks. There's never been a better time to get prepared to pass your NCLEX. If you haven't already done so, pass your IELTS, and you're welcome to join the free Kinetics Facebook group for anyone who wants to pass their IELTS exam. This is not just for Kinetics nurses. It's our way of wanting to pay it forward for everybody. So, oh, James, you're back. Thank you, James. I know sometimes we have technical hitches with Zoom, but thank you everybody for joining us. We will be having the next Lafora Talk Show in 1 month on the 4th of August. So we will be posting reminders, but please share this video with everybody. Thank you, Lelaine. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, James, for joining. We're so grateful for the opportunity. We wish everybody well. Stay safe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.